Insight, and then I realized I have no idea how many years we've been doing this. Governor Walker and I were trying to speculate whether this was his 10th consecutive Sunday Insight. Insight. Sunday Insight is the TV show. This is actually a radio show. And I have no idea. And this is going to be a little bit different than the regular radio show because, of course, with a regular radio show, I'm in a booth and I'm not wearing a tie. It's true, we often do the radio show without wearing any pants, but tonight, I figured because of the setup here, it would be a better idea to do this. Now, as many times as I have interviewed Scott Walker, and there have been a few times, the reality is that things have changed rather radically over the last couple of months, rather a couple of years. So this is going to be, from my point of view and from your point of view, I think a rather different discussion with Governor Walker, who obviously is at a whole different level of American politics. It's not actually new that we're at the center of national politics or political debate, but it's certainly new that we're where we are right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the whole radio show on the, right here on stage. We will take breaks, and occasionally you will see us do a little bit of radio bits. I'll have to talk with my producers back and forth, but that's what you get for being able to see it behind the scenes. So please join me in welcoming somebody who needs no introduction to this crowd, the governor of the state of Wisconsin, Scott Walker. Radio show now, and you'll be able to hear this tomorrow morning at 8:30. All right, we're going to start the show. Good morning, Wisconsin. Oh, now they're saying don't start because they, yes, now we have to wait for the music. This is the thing about it.
This is Insight 2015. Here's Charlie Sykes.
Good morning and welcome to Insight 2015. We are broadcasting from the Sharon Lynne Wilson Center, and of course our first guest is the governor of the state of Wisconsin, Scott Walker. Thanks so much for joining me again. That escalated kind of quickly. I mean, we went from 0 to 60 on this whole presidential race, and I can tell that it's really important because this morning's New York Times has a long story. Scott Walker, allergic to dogs, may run against political history. Apparently, the entire New York Times article is devoted to the fact that you may not be able to be elected president because you have what they call an aversion to dogs. So is that true?
Yeah.
You have an aversion to dogs?
I love dogs. As many people here know, I just can't breathe in a room for very long where a dog has been for a while because I'm allergic to the dander of both dogs and cats out there. So obviously as a kid, and in our family, actually 3 of the 4 of us are allergic to dogs, so our poor son Matthew had to go play with the neighbor's dog along the way.
You have heard of hypoallergenic dogs, right?
We've tried that, and it still doesn't work very well.
Yeah, okay, now, it did strike me as I was reading this story that there must not be anything important going on in the world, in Iran.
I thought Iran, nothing's going on. Or
that we would have the nation's premier newspaper focusing on Scott Walker with dogs. You never put a dog on the top of your car? You never ate a dog?
I didn't remember this is like the publication that's all the news that's fit to print. For a while when I read that story the other night online, I thought, is this The Onion? Did I mistakenly pick up the wrong publication?
Well, have you kind of learned something about national political reporting? There's kind of a race on to define you, as you know, and the same story basically says you need a dog because you give a gloomy stump speech filled with worry.
Yeah, because they counted the number of times I said I worried. Yeah. Many of the folks here in this audience and many more listening in now, I point out frequently when I'm on the stump that years ago, when Tonette and I talked about running for governor back in 2009, we talked about it, thought about it, and ultimately prayed about it. It was back then we did it even though we knew it would be tough in this state. We didn't know how tough back then, but we knew it would be tough because we were worried. Yeah. We were worried about the state under Jim Doyle and the Democrats who led.
So are you a gloomy guy? Are you gloomy now?
No, I'm a realist. I pointed out I was worried, but the good news is Speaker Voss and Senator Fitzgerald and others know, because of what we did, I'm an optimist. It tells me that as worried as I was about the state then, I'm excited about the turnaround now. As worried as I am about our country, I know with the right leadership in Washington, there's no doubt we can turn America around and make America great again, just like we did in Wisconsin.
Yeah, both on the left and on the right, which you know. I mean, at first it was, the buzz, well, okay, is he ready for prime time? Is he ready to ask the tough questions? Is he a flip-flopper? So how do you think you're doing right now?
Well, we
You've
talked,
got past the gotcha, liberal media, those kinds of questions, and now you're getting those other questions. How do you?
we get it from other would-be campaigns, because there's people that want to define folks in different ways and different niches for their own political purposes. But we were just talking off stage. I thought it was interesting. A week ago, I wouldn't normally commend people to read the Washington Post, but a week ago, not this Thursday, the past Thursday, there was a reporter from the Washington Post who followed me around for a whole day in South Carolina, and he actually did something unusual. He committed a flagrant act of journalism, as you would say, and he actually talked to voters. And he went to all these different places I was in South Carolina, and he listened and listened to what I said, and then he went out to the audiences and talked to voters, and something amazing happened. They said, we don't care about what he said on evolution. We don't care about whether he thinks the president's a Christian or not, or more appropriate, we don't care about the stupid question that they asked him and the fact that he pushed back. They said, here's a guy that took on the big government union bosses, that had 100,000 protesters, that worked with his assembly, worked with his Senate, got things done, and we want somebody in Washington to get things done. And we'd actually like someone to be like that to be our next president. And so it was interesting out there, and we can keep going back to that. And I say we, because it's not me. It's not about Scott Walker. It's about what we did here in Wisconsin with the Assembly and the Senate and all of us voters and other people who stood up against the powerful special interest out of Washington did. And I think people across this country are hungry for that.
But the reason I started off by saying that escalated quickly, you had gone through another election, the third election in 4 years, up until November. From November on, you were probably recovering, and then you had to put together the state budget. And then in about 5 minutes, you were one of the front runners for President of the United States. And as of today, you have this public policy poll that shows that you are number one. You are the literal front runner for the Republican nomination for President of the United States. Were you ready? Are you surprised by how quickly this has happened and this has happened?
Yeah, we were surprised for a couple of reasons. One, you remember back at the end of January, we went to Iowa, and gave a speech, and any people who followed me here in Wisconsin, the last 3 elections in 4 years know, I love going out to factories, and I take off my jacket, roll up my sleeves, and get out there and talk to voters, particularly undecided voters. And when we went to Iowa, I decided we were in a stage actually very much like we're in right now. And I said, I'm not going to use a written script. I'm not going to use a teleprompter. Heck, I'm not even going to use a podium. I grabbed a mic, went out, took off my jacket, talked to the crowd. And the media said this was some breakaway speech. Anyone who's campaigned with me in Wisconsin knows that's basically what I've done each of the last 4 years. But the media treated it such a big deal. It got so much national coverage.
You benefited from low expectations.
We did, but here's the interesting part.
Well, no,
it's true. It's only true.
Part of that narrative was, oh, he's a Midwesterner. He must be
bland.
Right? Yeah.
I said he's bland. He's not charismatic, and the whole bit. I said just telling the truth apparently isn't exciting. But I think the voters, they appreciate it. But what was an interesting thing, that the undertone that I think, Charlie, you and your listeners would get, but not the national media, was there were people all across America. I mean, literally, we had almost 300,000 donors in all 50 states in that recall. And the typical donation was people gave us $75 or less. And so there was a lot of grassroots support around this country who said, we need to help those people. Not just me, but the Lieutenant Governor, Rebecca Clayfish, the Senate Republicans who were up in the recall. We need to help them because they're standing up against those interests. And so they knew and admired what we had done in Wisconsin. But up until January, they didn't know if we were credible. When that story hit how big of a deal it was, suddenly they said, oh, that guy might actually be for real. Okay, let's take a quick break. When we come back, let's talk about some of the big issues, including what's going on in Indiana with immigration, with ethanol, a variety of other issues. And then later in our discussion, I want to talk about some of the state issues. You're listening to Insight.